SSAID. This training session is over the new transportation services. With SSAID, any service that we have at all, first thing you have to do is create a client. So let's go into the client here. Let's create a client. His address. Let's make it legit. 3520. Okay, that's it. Say we just created a client. From here, you can go beyond what we've just entered as far as more demographics fields. Like the birth date is the only required field that we ask you to enter in SSAID for demographic purposes. As you can see in SSA, when you create a client, there's very many fields here. Okay, community, if they want to be on social media, township, their race, I think their spouse's name, if they're married, divorced, their house, but they have a cat or dog, their income, their funding, if they're handicapped. This field's if they're deceased, their SAM's agency number or their agency number, like I said. Contact information here is their daughters or sons, whoever they need to contact in case of emergencies, and their doctors in their hospitals. So let's go back to the beginning here, client detail. We don't need all that information for this example, but your center may require that. And if there's fields that you need that we don't have, we can always add more. All you need to do is contact the SSAID office, and we'll take care of that at no cost. Once you add a client to any SSAID, our software, you have to add a service to that client. And under this example, we only have one service we're offering, and that's transportation. So we're going to add transportation to this client. Again, every client, you can add many services as you want to that client with our software. And all that is an additional record attached to the client database. This is a new database record. And let's go over that. This is the transportation record. It says when we started, if they stopped, the reason why, they stopped date, their funding, if they have a case manager, their transportation status is active. If they get evaluated, there's a form here, a date. If it's billed to somebody other than themselves, you can put a different address in here for billing purposes. You can put the directions and some comments here, which will show up on the route sheets when you print out the route sheets, or if you use the tablets for the drivers to pick up the clients with. Maximum bid price is a field that's used by some senior centers. That's the maximum amount of money that they'll pay for a trip. If they exceed that, that's mileage times rate. Then they'll have to contact a case manager to get it approved. But we track that. If you want to, you don't have to track it, but the field's there in case you want to. Units allowed, we can track by any funding, any kind of any kind of units that you want to track. Say this person is allowed for passport 20 units per month. In other words, 20 trips. It depends on how your contract reads, but say 20 units per month, and let's put this at the end of the month here. So they're allowed 20 units for this month. Like I said, you can add many fundings, many units per funding. So the client can go on various trips and be charged different fundings for that purposes, and we keep track of how many units that they go through. Now you don't have to track the default value here if you do not want to. We will still track by units how many units are used per month, per trip, and how much mileage and cost is used per month, per client, per trip. But this value is there for that reason. So let's go back to the client detail. Okay. Suspension period, if you have a client that's in the hospital or is not to be picked up, say they're a reoccurring client, they go to a dialysis every Monday at 2 o'clock, but they're in a hospital or they went on vacation. You can go in here and suspend that client. They will not show up on the route sheets until the end date is there, the end date that you specified on this record. If you do not put an end date on here, they will indefinitely be suspended until you do put a end date, and then it will come back live. And under client funding cost, again, you can add many different kind of fundings that you like, and the cost of the funding, the cost per mile or the cost per unit. That's your option. So you can have many fundings as you want per client. Okay, let's go back to the data here. You can have client notes. You can add more information if you like. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to hit save. Go back to the client detail. So we just added a new client by the name of Dennis Garrett, and we just added a new service called New Transportation. The A means it's active. Okay. They've got 20 units they're allowed per month, and we call the funding passport. And it's $12 per mileage and $13 per unit. Okay. So now we have a client that is an active transportation client. It's that easy. And over here on this administrative page, as you sign as administrator, this is kind of a dashboard to show you the total active transportation clients that you have. Right now we have 4 in this example. So now that we've got a client that's New Transportation, we can now go down and assign trips for this client. Okay, let's go down to New Transportation here. And this is the New Transportation screen. And I'll just go over each part of this screen. This screen right here, the transportation calendar, this is where we handle all the trips for the clients. We have a calendar. We click the calendar. You will go to whatever date that client has a trip. They'll call in and say, I want a trip for next Tuesday. You'll go in and click next Tuesday, and you'll put in the time and date from an origin and destination where this client's going to go on their trip. We record that on the calendar. The next step is you can have a worksheet. A lot of our clients, our customers, senior centers, or companies that use our software, they'll put everything under will call up front on the calendar. The will call would be the van called will call. That's what we call it. They come in and they print out a worksheet. And what they do is they'll go through and they'll allocate what driver is in the vicinity that day. They pre-schedule for each day, and sometimes for weeks in advance, each trip. So then all they have to do is print the route sheets out every morning for the drivers, and the drivers know what they have to do. But what we do is we'll go into the calendar, we'll add the trip. They'll have a worksheet. There's 4 or 5 worksheets here. If your senior center or business has its own unique look that you want to see your work data, your worksheet look like, we can create that for you, customization and no charge. But this is what they're using right now. They'll go through each one of these trips for the calendar, and they'll assign vans is what they're doing. So it's a worksheet. They'll write in what vans are going to pick them up, what leg. Our software actually breaks down by legs. If it's a round trip, that's 4 legs. We start off at the center. We go to their home. That's 1 leg. We go from the home to the destination. That's the 2nd leg. We go from the designation back to their home is the 3rd leg, and the 4th leg would be from their home back to the center. And we track every leg. And what's nice about that, you can have 4 different vans if you like. Pick them up, take them out, whatever. It doesn't have to be just 1 van, or it could be just 1 van. But it's so flexible, you can have it where you have multiple vans. Instead of sitting there waiting on the client, you can have other vans in the vicinity to pick them up, and you can organize that and bill it that way. Once you go through the worksheets, the calendar, you add the trip, you go through the worksheets, and we'll go into these. I just want to go through a summarization right now. You do a daily update. This will let you go into the actual trips from the calendar and let you change the routes, change the vans from will call to the van, what time they're going to pick them up. You can change all this information under the schedule update. And then from the schedule update, you can print the route sheets for the drivers. Okay. Here we do some transportation forms. You can generate some new forms. We track the van's monthly mileage here. You can see different things here we use odometer readings. Over here we have locations where the way our transportation is set up, our software, every time a client takes a trip, we record that location. It's in a database reservoir where any client, when we pull up a client to go a designation, it's already in the database. instead of retyping it every time, it's there to just click on and the designation's ready to go. If it's a new location, it's not in a database, you'd have to go out here and add that location, the name and the address of the hospital or the prescription drug store that you're going to. And here's some other reports here. So let's go right into it now. This is just the screen for the transportation. So let's get right into the meat of it. Let's schedule a trip for this new client. Let's go for the 30th here. The person's name, if I don't know it all, I can type in part of the name. It will bring up everybody with those initials or the whole full name. That's an active transportation client. This is the client we just added. It brings up their name and address. Okay, it says what kind of trip are you taking. I'm going to do a round trip here. You can do up to 5-way trips. Okay, if there's an extra cost, you're going more miles than you were allocated in your contract, you can always put extra cost in here. Some senior centers required that, or companies wanted that. The date of the trip, if they cancel the trip for some reason, you can put in the reason why. The maximum bid price, as you see the asterisk, you cannot change these values, but that would show up there. Say they're $300. We put that in initial record when we build it. The funding that we're going to use, let's use Passport. As you can see here, it shows how many units were allocated per month, and it will also show how many we've served. A repetitive trip, if you have a reoccurring trip for this day, this is a Friday on this calendar. Every Friday at this time, this person takes this same trip. You just say repetitive yes, and it will show up every Friday until you stop it. Okay. If there was previous trips, you could always review them here. We're going to pick this person up. We'll get right into the trip now. We're going to pick this person up at their home, and we're going to take them. Again, there is no client's previous locations, or they would be showing up here, because some clients go to the same place every week, and it would show here, and you would just click that. These are the locations that we've been with our other clients, so we just save them each time. So let's find a place here we can take this person to. Let's try ProScan here. Okay, we click in the address. You can put additional mileage if you know it, if you don't. We're going to make this a round trip. We're going to start from the center, and we're going to go back to the center when we're done. Because, again, we track mileage from the center and to the center. And we want to see that. You don't have to, but you can. You don't have to start from the center. If you're doing a trip, a 3-way trip, and you're picking the person up at a Walmart, you'll just say, you don't even click these back to the center. It's only when it applies. The last part of the leg of the trip, you'd say back to the center if you want to record that, or if it's the first part. But you can have up to a 5-way trip here. Okay, mileage we're not going to use. Pickup time at 8. Designation time, say it's at 9 o'clock. And again, this can all be updated once the trip is created. We go into a daily update, and we can change these times. We can change, how long they're going to be there. Say they're going to be there for an hour. There's one stop. We're going to put everything under will call. So let's hit save here. Okay. Now it's going to go out and create the trip. If you scroll down, this is our trip, okay, for this person. We pick them up at the senior center, and we go to their home. We go from their home to this ProScan, then from the ProScan back to their home, and then from the home back to the center. That's the complete trip. You can see it's 4 legs, okay. It shows the mileage to and from the trip. You click the mileage, and it should bring you up a Google map to show you directions how to get there. Okay, you can actually view that and print that out for the driver if you like. Okay, and it tells you how many miles, how long it's going to take, everything else. So that's kind of nice. So you get the mileage. It tells you how to get there. The cost per mile, units is 2 units for a round trip. That's how we got it set up. And if you go on down the screen, we've got everything defined what each field represents. Okay. So it tells you what all these fields are about. So right now we just created a round trip for this Dennis Garrett from his home to ProScan in Cincinnati, Ohio. So this trip is ready to go. We're done. We can go add a new trip, a next trip, a client. You just go through and start adding trips for each day. We can go back to transportation services, back to here. We'll pull up the calendar, and you can see under this date, we can pull this trip up, and there's our trip. Okay. You can have a client signature sheet you can print off. You can the trip list. We only have one here, so you're not going to see a whole lot. The daily route sheets. Again, this may be a different looking route sheet that you're used to, your senior center or your company. We can customize you a route sheet that you're used to seeing. And right now we are working where you can see this on a tablet. You don't even need to use the paper. We have it on tablets where it will create the route sheets per driver, and they would sign the tablets when they delivered, pick up the client, and the client would sign also. And then it would automatically updates the database. Your locations, again, if you had to add locations, your calendar authorization forms. So right now we just created a trip. Let's go back to transportation here. Okay, all your trips will show here. The other nice thing about it, and then this is under will call. You can bring up every trip by van once you allocate your vans. Let's go back to this trip right here. Go to this trip. What's one nice thing? You can also look at this client's calendar. If you want to see Dennis Garrett's for the months, what trips that they're taking, you could just click their calendar. It will show you that they're all their trips for the calendar month. Okay. The other calendar shows you every trip that we have. This one shows you individual by client. It's kind of a nice little feature. So right now we've created a trip. Let's go back to transportation services. We can print out a worksheet. Let's pull up the right date that I put this trip for. The 30th. I want to see the trips for that. Under will call. It'll bring up the trip I just created. Okay. From here I can daily services. It's just another way of looking at it. I want to go back again. These are just some of the reports that you can look at. People, our administrators in transportation will look at these reports and say, okay, usually there's a big list of more than one client going on a trip, and they'll sit and they'll write what they want to see. Let's see what Form 2 looks like for the 30th. Everybody has their own unique way of looking at it. It's just a different way of seeing it. And they'll write notes on here, who's going to, what leg, who's going to pick them up, everything else. So once you're done writing on this form, let me get the 30th here, whatever form you're comfortable with or you use. Again, they'll write notes in here. We'll go back to transportation systems. Once you've figured out what van is going to pick this person up at what leg, you'll go into the daily update. And the daily update lets you go into each leg of the trip. Let's pull up the 30th under will call. Okay. Here's the trip that we created. I can go into each leg here. Okay, these are called legs. Under this leg, this is stop number 1, and I can change the time, and I can tell what van is going to pick this. I'm going to say van 333 is going to pick this person up at their home, leave from the center at 8 at night. Okay. So now if you notice, we're looking at will call only here for this date. We still have the leg to pick the person up and take them back home. We can make this van number 337, or you can leave it the same van. It's up to you. But to show you how flexible the software is. So if we go under this date and we pull up this van, we can see what trips they're going to do. You can pick up their daily route sheets, print them out for them. This is what they're used to seeing. We got 2 different route sheets. Again, people have different styles that they want to see it at. The drivers would get these, or they would get it on their tablet if they have a tablet. And they would have their signatures, authorization forms, and everything else per client if they need to have that signed. But that's how it all works. The leg, the change. Now, if I want to go down and look at Dennis's van runs for today, I would pull him up and print them off, his route sheets. Okay. So, as you can see, we went over to transportation services. We added a client. We added the service of new transportation. We went into the calendar, we added a trip for that client. We printed off worksheets to figure out what vans are going to pick them up and drop them off, if you like, or you can leave the same van there. And then we actually went into, after we worked on our worksheets, we actually went in there and we updated each leg. Now again, you don't have to go through all these steps. You can just, when you first enter the trip under calendar, you can assign the van and just go all the way in and start printing out the route sheets, and you're fine from there. We have another report here. If you do track who exceeds their maximum units per month, we have a report that it will kick out who that person is and how much. A lot of people don't use it because it's too much time, but it is there for that reason. So all in all, this is how the new transportation system works. Um, Again, it can be simple or complex, but you can just add all the trips. Every time a client calls, you go to calendar, you add a trip, you just say here whatever their name is, you type it in, you bring it up, you select them, you figure out what kind of trip it's going to be, a one-way round trip, whatever. You put in extra costs if you want. You can see we do track how many units they use per month per funding. Okay, multiple fundings if you like. Their destinations, where they are going, we keep track of that. Okay, the times if you want, you can always update that later. Hit save here. It creates a trip down here. You can look at the mileage. It goes out to Google Map and gives you an actual demonstration how to get there and a description. The bottom of the screen tells you everything about each field. If the trip is canceled, if it's zero mileage. If there's a zero mileage here, that means that the address that you entered in the location is not an address that Google's finding. So you would have to make sure that matches a Google address. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Now let's go back. Once you do trips, you can do billing also. You can do reports for transportation. Right now we have various reports. If there's a report that you need that we don't have, again, we will create that report for you for free customization. These are reports that we've been required or asked to do for our current clients using transportation. Under billing, you can go to new transportation here, and let's see what we got. Let's go to August, to end of August. You can bring up an individual client, or you can bring up everyone for all fundings. And if you noticed here, we keep track of the units to cost, and then we total it up. We show each day that person had a trip, and then in the yellow boxes, it's the total amount for that month, for that time period. It could be for a week or for a day for that unit. This is their total amount billable, okay? And then at the bottom of the report, it shows the total number of mileage and everything else that you need. Again, this can be customized to your satisfaction. You can export this to Excel and do whatever you want to do with it. But that's pretty much it right now. So you got your reports, you got your billing, and your new transportation. So if you have any questions, you can always contact the SSAID office on our 800 number on our website, or email us. And our software is growing daily. We make modifications. Each customer requires different things, so we change it to customize it for their needs. So hope that helped you quite a bit. And again, you can call our office for any questions. Thank you very much.